Hi everyone and welcome to Courage Every Day. My name is Tshepiso Maledu, the founder of Courageous Women Arise and the host of this show. Today I'm joined by Lebogang Mashaba, the CEO of RealPPE Marketplace and an ambassador and principal of Women's Startup Competition Africa. Lebo is an experienced human capital development specialist with over 20 years of expertise in fostering professional growth and cultivating leadership skills. She's accomplished in the areas of leadership, management, and entrepreneurship, with a track record of success spanning 16 years. She holds a master's in business administration, a postgraduate diploma in business management, and a range of certifications, including professional director, assessor, moderator, and skills development facilitator. Lebo is passionate about education, youth development, and building startups ecosystems to reduce unemployment and empower women. She is the founder of History Makers that has positively impacted the lives of over 6,000 learners. She's an executive director of RealPPE Marketplace, an innovative e-commerce platform. She has demonstrated her entrepreneurial acumen and passion for creating sustainable solutions. She's a dynamic speaker, influential board member, and dedicated to making a positive impact through people. She contributes to various international and local boards, leveraging her expertise to shape strategic decisions and drive impactful initiatives. In addition to her professional accomplishment, she takes pride in her role as a dedicated wife and a loving mother of three. Deeply rooted in a Christian faith, she fuels her love for humanity and drives her passion for making a positive impact in the lives of others. Congratulations on your appointment as an ambassador and principal of Women's Startup Competition Africa, Lebo.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor and a massive responsibility to really champion and pioneer women's startup competition in the African continent, and ensuring that we are able to support and help to close the financial gender gap for women in Africa.
Amazing work. We will deep dive into it later on. But maybe before we start, we have two standing features of the show. We want to know a bit about your definition of courage, and later on, we also want to know what's your next courageous move. But before we start, tell me something interesting about you. Share like the most interesting fun fact or habit about yourself, something that is not on your beautiful profile.
That is a tall order, Tshepiso. It's a tall order indeed. But I guess some people will find it interesting that I have an ear for music, In fact, I started informal DJing in the early 90s before it was all commercialized like it is today. In fact, my first so-called job was I had a radio gig when I was a teenager. I think I was about 16 or so at Radio Pulpit. So I think some people were like, we didn't know that. But I guess when you hear my voice, you can kind of get a sense that this is the voice of DJ Libza Doops and Doops.
Oh, Doops and Doops in the house, y'all. That is super great. All right, was that your DJ name, Doops and Doops?
Yeah, that was my stage name. Name. Yeah, and I guess another thing maybe, now I think about it, is that, amongst my peers, I was one of the first to get my license. I think I got my license when I was about 18. And I guess I've always loved cars when I was, I've always loved cars, and I just longed to be behind the wheel. So I was like a designated driving instructor unofficially for a lot of my friends, family members, and so forth. So if everything else collapses, I guess I can always be a driving school instructor.
Ah, yeah, the Uber over days. Yeah, so that's also an option. That's quite interesting. Thank you for sharing that with us, Lebo. And so maybe as we move along, let's get to gear one. As we drive our car today, we'll use the car, I guess, as an analogy. So one of our definitions of courage, as courage every day, is inspired by Brené's Brown definition that courage is showing up and allowing yourself to be seen. What is your definition of courage? Would like to know, how do you define courage?
Courage to me has two faces. The front side of courage looks like doing the things that you're passionate about, things that matter, and often things that scare you, but you do it anyway. And often those things require the mundane, the boring, the not so explosive. But daily and weekly, you keep at it even when you cannot see the results. On the other hand, the second phase of courage is the mountaintop experience when it's deemed, or when everybody will say, hey, now you're successful, when they see the results, when they see the fruit of your labor, when everybody says, how did you do that? That was so audacious, that was so courageous. So, for me, to put it plainly, courage is showing up daily, doing what matters to you until you achieve the results.
That is amazing, right? I think I hear two things that you are emphasizing from your definition. One is doing the mundane, whether it's the good things, the exciting things, or the hard things, but also it's the inspirational side. Because once you've achieved that thing, like you say, people say you come out courageously. It becomes inspiring to other people. So it's about how you become, yeah, I guess maybe faithful with the little, and
Yes,
keep at it while on the other side there is that side where people are inspired. That's
absolutely.
quite
And I
interesting.
guess,
Yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
And I guess, and the reason why this is important is because I see that there's a lot of women who, uh, do things, or they're pursuing their dreams. As they're pursuing their dreams, they feel like what they're doing on a daily basis, because the results at that current moment are not explosive, then they don't see that as showing up courageously. But it's understanding that it's not often we, especially with the whole Instagram live, and everybody posting images of what is deemed as success, but is really understanding that when when everybody celebrates you, they don't see that underneath there's been this hard work, there's been the sleepless nights, there's been pursuing something that at times you even doubt yourself, but you believe inside your heart that you're supposed to be doing what you're doing, and in that doing, that eventually on the other side, it's then becomes the mountaintop experience.
Thank you for that definition of courage. I think it has just been so insightful. Then maybe let's move a bit further. I mean, as I said, the second part of our definition is about showing up courageously. How do you show up courageously?
How do I show up courageously every day? I think one key area that for me is fundamental is being a mother of three and a wife, and understanding the kingdom mandate of those roles. That I am responsible, together with my husband, for the lives of the next generation, the Benjamin generation, for the kingdom of God. So parenting intentionally, for me, and not focusing only at exclusively the education and everything, but understanding that as we parent intentionally is not about the now, but it's also about eternity. And that thought is also very frightening, but also a privilege you know and on the business side of things, is showing up for our clients on a daily basis at RealPPE with the intention of giving the best service and exceeding their expectations, and choosing daily to build this revolution.
Yeah, the word that's coming out a lot in that definition, or in how you show up courageously every day, is the word intentionality. So I hear you saying be intentional as a parent with understanding the bigger picture, of eternity. At the same time, is being intentional in how you engage with your customers. Thank you so much, Lebo, for those beautiful definitions of courage and how you show up courageously. So let's deep dive then in today's conversation around women startup and women entrepreneurs. And so we would like to know, I mean, please share with us what led you to become an entrepreneur to start with.
I think I became an entrepreneur by by default, in a sense. Um, you know, uh, I was raised by a single mom, and my dad passed away when I was quite young. I think I was about 5 years old. So being raised by a single mom, and who didn't really finish, school. I think she finished at about maybe grade 5 or grade 6 or something, but quite, I would call it standard 6. The grades tend to be very complicated for my mind.
Old school
Old
girl.
school, old school. Yes. So, so, one of the things that, I think it was just wisdom from God. She would give me pocket money, but that pocket money will be, like if, for example, is 20 cents, I'll get all the 20 cents or the 50 cents. Every year you graduate in terms of how much you get, but every month I'll get, a pack full of the coins that are supposed to be my pocket money for the month. And that, in a sense, taught me, one, to learn about money, managing my money, because if I would use that money by going reckless and all that, I can't come back to my mom and say my pocket money is finished, I'll get a whipping. But at the same time, I had to figure out, how do I grow this money? So one of the first things that I did is that when I was still at primary school, there was a mom, Malaban, who was working at a sweet factory. And they would give, like, they'll give them sweets and so forth that are like, like your almost rejects that didn't come out properly from a factory perspective. And then I will buy those sweets and I'll go and I'll sell them at school. And I think that was my first, early memories of just, venturing into entrepreneurship. Is selling sweets at school, and eventually, would sell ice cream during summer at home, or even the ice lollies. So I've just always, as long as I can remember, even when I was being full-time employed, there's always been an entrepreneurial bug in me. I'll always be looking at doing something, whether it's network marketing, whether it's figuring out, yes, 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 yes.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
That's
so
that's that's
yeah.
amazing, Lebo. Yeah. So I'm intrigued by your story of how this whole entrepreneur thing started, right? Just being a steward of, carry, or that tax money that mama gave
Mm,
you, and how
mm,
you managed to increase that, right? I mean, that
mm.
already shows that you had this thing in you of multiplying money, because I mean, a normal child would be like eating it kaofela, but it's so interesting that you were just a
Mm,
good steward and you saw opportunities out of the little that you had, and that
mm.
speared the entrepreneurship spirit in you, which is amazing. Which is
Yeah.
amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that story with us. I hope our listeners are inspired by that. Like, how do you turn what is little that you have into something, into a business, right? Because a lot of us would be like, "Akna chelete, where do I start?" Hunter, you
No,
can take
true.
that 50 rands and do something with just that 50
Mm,
rands, like Lebo
absolutely.
did, as an entrepreneur. Awesome. So, Lebo, I mean, there are ups and downs to any career, to any profession. Do you mind to probably share what has been some of your highlights of being an entrepreneur, and a low light of being an entrepreneur so far?
Yeah, I think I've been privileged to have been in business for the last, for like, full time for the last 16 years. I know it sounds like a lot when you think about it, but
Forever.
having started History Makers, and which is an education and a training business, One, massive highlight when it comes to history makers was that, when we started with about 8 learners in 2009. And to date, I would say we have been able to, impact over 6,000 lives, learners' lives nationally, So for me, that is like something that, the reason we call ourselves history makers and define ourselves as that is that we realize that we are here to create an impact. It's not just about profits, but it's about how do we make a difference in the lives of people, and particularly young people. So History Makers has managed to impact about 6,000 lives with our education and training programs. But however, our programs have not only impacted our learners' life. We were very intentional at the beginning to recruit young graduates to be part of our tutors. And for most of them, it was their first job experience. And today, it's incredible to watch the impact that they are making in society today. As we speak right now, we have people, for example, some of our graduates are now CAs who are serving as partners in one of the top audit firms in South Africa. And we have engineers that are serving as executives in the parastatals. One of our tutors also is past tutors, ex-tutor, is a regional head in the Clinton Health Access Initiative, responsible for Namibia. So, knowing that, one, we were intentional about creating opportunities and giving young people their first opportunity to be able to workplace readiness program, if in a sense. And I know that in that way was a little way of creating history in their lives to be able to now become impactful in the current careers that they hold. Last year December, Mr. Moyo, Ernest Moyo, we had coffee with them, and he showed us. I was with my husband. He showed us a certificate of history makers that we gave him as a teacher to say we appreciate the work that he did, and he still kept it. I mean, that's how many years later. And it was just so humbling to say, it was so special to him. It was not just one of those first jobs that he did, and then but he said he appreciated that we saw potential in him when nobody else could. So I think for me, that's one of the big highlights in terms of the impact that we've made as an organization. And on the low light, in a sense, has been the impact of COVID on history makers itself, because history makers as a company were negatively impacted by COVID. But at the same time, what is interesting is that COVID gave life to RealPPE. So I guess there's no low lights. Just how God turns everything around for our good. Right now, as much as we still are in the education and training business, but the core focus right now is really building the ecosystem and building RealPPE, which was birthed out of what was deemed as a negative situation.
My conversation with Lebo is accelerating. According to the Mastercard Index of Women Entrepreneurs, women in South Africa are making progress as entrepreneurs, indicating a strong will and determination to survive, despite the gender gap and impact of COVID-19 pandemic. I asked Lebo to tell us about the Women Startup Competition and how it will contribute to this progress. That's quite interesting, Lebo, to note around some of your low lights, right? I mean, research tells us that during the pandemic, a lot of entrepreneurs had to pivot their businesses. Was RealPPE a marketplace, a pivot idea? Tell us, how did it come about?
It was not a pivot, it was a survival of the fittest.
Tell us how you survived.
So basically, in 2019, we had made a decision in the business as the executive management team to almost diversify our business dependency, because the majority of our business was dependent on the government, but we wanted to reach the private sector. So so we were actively going to market our services, helping companies with BEE through skills development. So a lot of the contracts were going to be finalized in the 2020 at the end of the financial year. And when the following year, 2020, March hit, and there was a shutdown, everything was closed down. Then, when we went back to our clients to saying, okay, we're supposed to start new contracts, what's happening? And then, it was very clear that they were not prioritizing BE. Skills development was not in their high priority list. They wanted to just survive, and everything was just cut down. And obviously, knowing that kids must eat, we need to survive. I had to ask them, okay, what else are you spending money on that is outside of your core business? And the only thing that they were spending money on was PPE. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, PPE, I didn't know much about it. But, I was like, okay, fine. How much are you spending money on? And when they were talking about 500K, a million, and so forth, it was like, okay, I can work with that. We can do something, because as a
Yes.
business person, as an entrepreneur, you learn to be resourceful. You learn to, not sit there and wallow and say, you know what, I'm not going to be able to. You need to survive, so you make a plan. So I took to market looking for specific products that they were looking for at that time. There was a lot of shortage of your 3M masks, your nitrile gloves, and so forth. And I went to the market looking for some of these products that they were looking for, and only to find that I was shocked. The industry was full of fake products, fake sellers, fake masks, fake
Sure.
buyers. Like, there was a lot of scams, fraudulent people. The buyers did not trust the seller did not trust. I've never been in a place or in an industry or an environment where somebody says, before I can sell you anything, you need to prove that you have, you must send them like your, what they call a bank comfort letter. I've never been in spaces like that where, and I had actually a bad experience through where, I lost one big client because of those types of things, and that kind of left a very bad taste to my mouth, and I like, something needed to be done. And that's how Real PP was birthed. It was birthed to really bring trust in the industry, to bring light, to connect buyers and sellers, and making sure that both the buyer and the seller know that they will get the products that they're looking for, quality products, but at the same time the seller will know that if I'm going to be selling my products, the buyer is not going to run away with my products without paying. So that's how Real PPE Marketplace was birthed. It was really out of a need of seeing that there was just a whole lot of things, and the industry is full of mistrust, and is really trying to restore trust in the industry and saying, hang on, you can still be able to um, buy and sell. You can be able to engage in the industry without necessarily being afraid of the other side. And yeah, so that's how we managed to
Sure.
survive and come up with the platform.
What a story. What a story. But I'm learning something very critical from what you said there, right? Going to your clients and asking them questions, where are they spending their money on? I think that was like yeah, like a game changer in your
Mm,
business, right? Because we
mm,
can continue as usual in business and not realize that the opportunities are actually sitting with the clients that we already
absolutely.
have. And I think your
Mm,
strategy of asking them where you spending your money on gave you that access to understand, to pivot to a new business idea. The second thing that
mm,
is interesting that you've said that I quite like, right, is then understanding where is the gap in the market. I mean, you could have just
mm,
gone and started selling masks like everyone
mm,
who was selling masks back in the day.
mm,
But I think it's interesting that you said then you had to understand what's going on. You wanted to restore trust
mm.
between the seller and the buyer, which is quite profound.
Yes, no, no, no. Thank you so much. One fascinating statistic that I just came across is that, in Africa, we have a majority of entrepreneurs are women. Yet the same continent does not experience that much funding. A lot of women in Africa do not experience funding. And women startup competition exists to be able to help women to gain opportunities, to be able to close the gender funding gap. It's a non-profit organization that believes that gender diversity is not just for females, and but it's an issue for all people, not just women. And we seek to increase access to funding opportunities for women-led businesses through our regional and global competitions. And this is where women-led businesses get an opportunity to pitch their incredible businesses to a panel of global investors. And at Women Startup Competition, our mission is really simple, is to empower female entrepreneurs and their teams to achieve their business goals and to provide an unprecedented opportunities. Now, if you look at what has been done, and like I said, that in Africa, Africa has a majority of women-owned businesses, and we're talking both informal and formal. But what we find is that they're not getting the support that they needed. And we are aiming particularly for women startup competition launch in Africa is really how do we help women to close the gender funding gap?
Awesome. So, I mean, there are women or businesses that would like to be part of this competition. How can they enter this competition?
Oh, yes. We are launching the Women Startup Competition Africa for the first time in the continent. It has existed in Europe, operating in 12 European countries. It has impacted since 2014 620 female founded startups in Europe. But we felt that it was important that women in Africa get the same opportunities and the same privilege. So we are launching in Cape Town on the 29th to the 30th of August at Womb Hub in Greenpoint in Cape Town. People can obviously register through our social media platforms, Women Startup Competition Africa, and you will get all the information there. And those who want to participate need to come through to our launch so that they can understand how we work, what our criteria is, and so forth. But really, we are looking forward to being part of reaching and igniting a new era of entrepreneurship in Africa.
That's exciting. So, to everyone listening, head up to Cape Town to hear more about the Women Startup Competition as it will be launching 29th and 30th of August. So, Lebo, before we bring this car, I mean, we've been on a cruise mode. Before we kind of just bring this car to a stop and put our handbrake up, would like to know what is the best advice you've received as an entrepreneur?
The best advice is actually a quote that I've coined in observation of my life. And it says that success is not a sprint. Be patient, stay the course. Success is cumulative. When a lot of women can understand, in fact, anybody who's listening, whether you're a young person or even a man, that success is cumulative. It's the small steps that you take on a daily basis that brings you closer to your dreams. There, when you understand that it's not an instant, your popcorn generation where you think, one day you'll start a business and it will become a success, it will become successful, you'll get the money, you'll get the sales and everything else. But really understanding that it is a sprint, it's not a sprint, but it's really a race that you need to be very patient on the course and understand that it is about the small steps that you do. When you look back with where we started with 8 learners when it comes to history makers. But when people look at the impact of 6,000 learners, they don't realize that it was birthed from those 8 learners who came in, and we continued until we're able to impact about 6,000 lives.
Nice one. Success is not a sprint, It is rather a race or a marathon, as Lebo has put it. Be patient. Please, Lebo, tell us, what is your next courageous thing? What are you doing, or what will you be doing as your next courageous move?
My next courageous move is currently what I'm doing right now, which is really pioneering the Women's Startup Competition Africa and making sure that I'm part of the solution of changing the trajectory of, the women in Africa and getting and helping to close, the gender funding gap for them. And of course, is building a future unicorn, a revolutionary e-commerce marketplace that focuses on safety gear for workers in Africa. RealPPE marketplace is really those two things are the things that they keep me awake at night in making sure that I'm able to show up courageously and make sure that these are legacy things. It's not just about the comfort of today, but it's what the impact will make in the generations to come.
That is super amazing. The unicorn through the RealPPE, and also just, closing the gender gap, as you've already said, with making sure that women are funded. So that is great, great, great work. Thank you so much, Lebo, for that. Maybe before we close up, where can people find you? Please share your social media handles.
Yeah, my social media handle is Lebogang Mashaba. The LinkedIn, that's the main professional page that I use. And of course, then they can reach RealPPE on realppe.co.za. And when it comes to Women's Startup Competition, you can follow us on our social pages, Women's Startup Competition Africa, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and of course on Facebook.
My conversation with Lebo has been sobering. We are living in a microwave 2 minutes noodles generation. We want success to come in 2 minutes. However, what Lebo shared was that success is not a sprint. It has twists and turns. Be patient with the process. To everyone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur, courageously pursue it, knowing that there will be twists and turns, but at the end, it will pay out. If you want to share your story of courage, email us on cwarise.info@gmail.com. If you don't want to miss an episode, find and subscribe to Courage Every Day on your favorite podcast platform, or follow us on Courageous Women Arise social media platform. Courage Every Day, where women share how they show up courageously every day.